The original 7th Corps' plan provided that the 90th Division be committed on the 4th Division's right for the advance up the peninsula. In accordance with this plan, the 325th Infantry Regiment was attached to the 4th Division for use on its right along the coast. However, modifications in the original plan had been made as a result of the 82nd Division's early difficulties along the Meteray, and the 4th Division's involvement across the entire northern sector, making it impractical to disengage any part of the division. When General Bradley directed on June 9th that the peninsula be cut before proceeding against Cherbourg, General Collins decided to commit the 90th Division through the Meteray bridgehead in an attempt to break through west of the river. Verbal orders to this effect were issued to Brigadier General J. McKelvey, commanding the 90th Division. The 90th Division's new mission was to cross the Meteray at both Lafayette and Pont and attack west. The 82nd Airborne was to hold the line of the Meteray until the 90th Division had secured a foothold of approximately 2,000 yards west of the river and to take over the security of the southern flank of the Corps along the north bank of the Douve. Initially, General McKelvey had only 2 regiments available for the assignments west of the Meteray. The 357th was to attack in the direction of Amfreville, Orgland, and Saint-Colombe, while the 358th was to cross the Pont causeway and attack toward Picauville, Pont-l'Abbé, and Saint-Savieur-le-Vicomte. The 357th Regiment started across the Lafayette Causeway at approximately 0400 hours on June 10th. The bridge was under artillery fire, which inflicted a few casualties and delayed the crossings briefly. The 325th Glider Infantry remained in position awaiting the outcome of the attack. This proved to be a fortunate decision. At the very time the 90th began passing through, the Germans attacked and stopped the 357th on the high ground beyond La Motte. The 2nd Battalion recoiled, with many of its men falling back to the ground still held by the Glider Infantry. Some of these men remained there for the rest of the day. In the afternoon, the 1st Battalion relieved the 2nd, and at 21:30 hours launched another attack toward Amfreville. This attack failed as well. On that day, the regiment suffered 99 casualties, including 15 killed and 84 wounded. The 358th met with somewhat better success at the southern bridgehead, although it also fell short of reaching its intermediate objective. Colonel Shanley's force was in possession of Hill 30, north of the causeway, but the situation to the west was vague. The movement across the causeway was led by the 1st Battalion and was completed by 0530 hours. The enemy opposed the crossing with only scattered rifle fire from a 17th century castle called the Ile-Marie Castle in the woods south of the causeway. As the 3rd Battalion came across the causeway, Company I was detached to clear out the castle. The 1st Battalion went on to occupy Picauville and then pushed west towards Pont-l'Abbé. About 500 yards west of Picauville, the battalion received its first heavy concentration of fire. The companies deployed abreast and under regimental order dug in. Colonel James Thompson, the regimental commander, had become apprehensive about a situation to the rear. Company I had not completed the clearing of the castle. Furthermore, a mission to blow the bridge over the Douve at Bézuville-la-Bastille didn't succeed either because of fire from across the river. Colonel Thompson therefore instructed the 1st Battalion to assume the defensive. In mid-afternoon, the Germans counterattacked, but the 1st Battalion held. After an artillery preparation, the 1st Battalion tried to reach Pont-l'Abbé again, but the attack stalled, and at 1930 hours, the 1st and 3rd Battalions began to dig in. The 1st Battalion alone suffered a total loss of 129 men. Most of the losses were from mortar and 88mm fire. Both regiments of the 90th Division attacked again on June 11th. The 3rd Battalion, 357th Regiment, cleared Amfreville in the morning. Later in the day, the 1st Battalion attempted a wide flanking movement, but the approach of darkness found the regiment still short of its intermediate objective. The main effort on June 11th was made by the 358th against Pont-l'Abbé, where Germans offered stubborn resistance. This was to be expected, because Pont-l'Abbé occupied a commanding position astride one of the few roads permitting access to the peninsula from the south. All 3 battalions were committed in the attack, supported by all 4 artillery battalions of the division. The infantry jumped off at 1330 hours behind a rolling barrage, which advanced about 100 yards every 5 minutes. The 3 battalions advanced steadily behind this fire, but were soon slowed down by machine gun fire from the east edge of the town and from the north. By early evening, the town was partially encircled, but the enemy still delayed its capture with well-directed machine gun and artillery fire. By June 12th, the 359th Regiment had rejoined the 90th Division, and 2 of its battalions were now committed in the center. This necessitated a change in boundaries for the 2 other regiments, but not in the direction of the attack or regimental objectives. A gap had existed between the 2 regiments from the beginning, and the 359th simply took over a narrow front of 1,000 yards in the center. Each regiment now had the support of approximately 3 platoons of tanks. Despite this additional strength, the 90th Division continued to perform poorly. The 357th near Amfreville made 2 attacks on June 12th, the first recoiling after the loss of 2 tanks, the second making slight gains on one flank but failing to gain any momentum. The 1st and 2nd Battalions attacked again the following morning, but advanced only a few hundred yards all day. Late in the day, the 3rd Battalion moved up on the right with the intention of hitting Gourbeville from the northeast. But the maneuver was not completed until dark and the attack was not fully developed. The regiment had average daily casualties of about 150 during these first days of Hedgerow fighting. The 359th in the center had similar experiences. Not until the evening of June 13th did the regiment reach its initial objective, the road between Gourbeville and Pont-l'Abbé. In the south, the 358th was ordered on June 12th to contain Pont-l'Abbé with 1 battalion and use the other 2 to bypass it on the right. As the 2nd and 3rd Battalions tried to advance past the town, they were stopped by machine gun, mortar, and rocket fire. Colonel Thompson and Lieutenant Colonel Nave, commanding the 1st Battalion, were both wounded early in the morning. Lieutenant Colonel Christian Clark, commanding the 2nd Battalion, took over the regiment. By this time, the original order to contain and bypass Pont-l'Abbé was changed, probably as the result of General Ridgway's objection. The latter feared that the enemy's possession of the town would imperil the 82nd Airborne's river-crossing operation at Bouzeville-la-Bastille, and plans were made for the immediate capture of Pont-l'Abbé. The 1st Battalion was badly under strength, but the regiment reorganized and prepared for an assault on the town following an air bombardment. The air mission carried out by one group of P-47s was very effective, but the infantry attack was delayed. Artillery was therefore laid on the town prior to the jump-off at 1925 hours. The double bombardment made Pont-l'Abbé a shambles. That night, the 3 battalions went into a defensive position around Pont-l'Abbé. Colonel Clark decided to attack westward again early in the morning on June 13th, but some of his positions were bombed and the attack was delayed several hours. When the attack was finally launched, it made no significant gains. The 2 other regiments in the center and on the right flank also failed to make satisfactory progress. By the evening of June 13, the 90th Division had barely reached its intermediate objective. In its first 4 days of combat, the 90th Division had made an inauspicious beginning. Unfortunately, it had to take over a bridgehead, the condition of which was still obscure, and had immediately run into a well-entrenched enemy in terrain most favorable to the defender. On the other hand, the division was not making the progress expected of it by the corps commander. The immediate action taken was to relieve the division commander and 2 regimental commanders. The division was now placed under the command of Major General Eugene Landrum. In common with other units, the 90th Division had been seeking a solution to the problem of hedgerow fighting. The rolling terrain between the Douve and Mettray was Normandy hedgerow country at its worst. Except for the flat, marshy bottomlands along the rivers and a few small wooded areas, the entire countryside was cut into small pastures, fields, and orchards, each with its inevitable hedgerow border. Frequently, there was a double hedgerow with a drainage ditch between, thus forming a natural trench. The enemy made good use of the hedgerows, building up his resistance line directly behind them. Automatic weapons were usually placed at the corners where they could cover the open field, enfilade the hedgerow lines of approach. Each hedgerow became a separate objective, and the line of advance was often determined more by the configuration of the hedgerows than by the contour of the terrain. Observation was limited to a few hundred yards or less. Anti-tank guns had poor fields of fire, control was difficult to maintain, and the maneuver of units hard to coordinate. These natural advantages held by the enemy prevailed in other sectors as well. A partial solution to the combat problem was the persistent application of basic infantry principles and maximum initiative by individuals and small groups. This lesson was stressed in an operational memorandum issued on June 19th by 90th Division Headquarters. It stated that the division's small gains and heavy losses were due in part to failure to apply training lessons properly, and suggested stressing to the men the fundamentals of constant movement, of returning fire by some while others maneuver, and of following artillery closely.